In 1940, John Steinbeck needed to get away. So on a bright March afternoon, the 38-year-old future Nobel Prize-winning author and his best friend, marine biologist Ed Ricketts, cast off from the harbor in Monterey, California, aboard a chartered 77-foot fishing vessel named Western Flyer. Their skipper set a course for Mexico's Sea of Cortez, also known as the Gulf of California, that lies between the Mexican mainland and the Baja California Peninsula.
It's almost like a hero's journey. It's going to a place of unknown. If you've been to the Sea of Cortez, you know that it's a beautiful, magical place. Jacques Cousteau called it the aquarium of the world. It was really remote, and it still is.
Steinbeck wanted to get as far away from civilization as he could. He'd built a stellar writing career with Of Mice and Men and other celebrated books and short stories. Then his masterpiece, The Grapes of Wrath, was released. Its epic tale of mistreated migrant farm workers brought him unimagined acclaim, winning the National Book Award for Fiction and a tidy sum from Hollywood for its movie rights. But reactionaries unleashed an ugly and vicious backlash. Steinbeck received death threats, and angry mobs across the country burned his book, even in his hometown. The uproar drove him to give up on writing fiction.
He was world-weary, exhausted, needed a change. There was a critical firestorm around the United States about the book, whether he lied, whether he was communist. The whole depiction of power and powerlessness and poverty, whether he'd gotten it right, all that was discussed. And he just wanted out of the firestorm.
So he sailed on the Western Flyer to the Sea of Cortez with his friend on a makeshift scientific voyage that became a legend.
The Sea of Cortez expedition that Steinbeck and Ricketts did wasn't the first scientific expedition to the Sea of Cortez, but it's certainly the most famous.
They collected and studied tide pool animals, and the voyage spawned one of the most extraordinary books ever produced by a famous author of literature. Sea of Cortez was Steinbeck's first nonfiction book, and only collaboration.
It's unlike anything else that Steinbeck wrote, and certainly unlike what we would expect most fiction writers to produce.
His widow, Elaine, told me once that John's favorite book of all that he wrote was Sea of Cortez.
It's about more than any one thing.
Exploration and adventure and science all melded into one.
It became the definitive scientific reference about Gulf of California tide pool animals and explored a revolutionary way of seeing the world that, 30 years later, became the foundation of the environmental movement. In 1941, John Steinbeck and Ed Ricketts introduced readers to ecology.
That is its real contribution, providing a philosophical roadmap to looking at how the Sea of Cortez would work as a complex, dynamic ecosystem that includes humans as well as animals and flora and oceanographic processes and physical processes. There's nothing that stands on its own.
So to understand Steinbeck's perspective on the human experience, you have to read that book.
So the Western Flyer, just a stinky old sardine boat, goes on a 6-week expedition to the Sea of Cortez and facilitates a transformation in our understanding of this remote region, and all of a sudden becomes so much more than just a stinky old fishing boat.
People are shocked that this boat is still around. When people hear that Western Flyer exists, the first question is, where is it? Can I go see it?
The Flyer represents a place where lightning struck. And so I thought if I could find this boat where this important thing happened, that would be a good thing to save it and do something with it.
It came around the corner being towed by a tugboat and this mysterious ship that had been sunk, and we all went down to the dock's edge and took a look at it as it was being hauled out of the water, and that was John Steinbeck's, and that was the Sea of Cortez, and there was a mystery to this boat.
I look at it more as an opportunity to transfer some excitement about the natural world to young people and give them a chance to see something happen in their own eyes and feel it with their own senses.
Port Townsend, with its rich history of wooden boat construction, its trade school, the businesses that can do the work here in town, really is one of the last places in all of North America, including Canada, that could really pull off a job the size of restoring the Western Flyer.
I spent half a day there and just realized this boat has to stay here. This is where all these talented guys are, and been just really lucky that it's there.
The historic restoration side of the project is about an 18 to 24-month project. I'm hoping to get full swing by late spring of 2017 with a completion of essentially fall of 19.
I guess the mission is, in Steinbeck's words, to stir curiosity, to use this as a platform that we can actually collect real data, involve the kids in it, tell them why it's important, show them why it's important.
A lot of young people, even living a few miles from the seacoast, have never seen a tide pool. The Western Flyer could be a bridge for these young people to help them discover worlds they didn't even know existed.
The wooden hull allows us some things, different instruments we can run that aren't interfered with by a steel boat. So we're challenging some research people to develop real science, where grad students and researchers have the opportunity to do things that a larger, more expensive boat couldn't do.
This was not a research vessel at all. This was a functioning fishing vessel that these men brokered into use for a cause that it was never intended. And so the boat, in essence, the ship, becomes the embodiment of really what this expedition was, which was a hybrid of all of these things: philosophy, science, fun, friendship, conflict, travel.
A woman came in and said, you mind if we take a look at the boat? And we're from Sitka, Alaska, and we're real Ed Ricketts fans. And I said, oh, I got some time. It's the end of the day. Let's walk up and take a look at the boat. And the wife came to the top of the stairs, and she's probably about a 70-year-old woman, and she walks out onto the boat. And husband comes to the top of the stairs, and he's a little bit older. He's probably just about an 80-year-old man. And he stops, dead in his tracks at the top of the stairs. And he literally just looks at his wife, and he says, honey, I'm shaking. Shaking. I couldn't believe he was shaking. And he's just, I'm a biologist my whole life. This is what it's all about. I'm walking onto essentially hollowed ground.
There probably isn't a marine biologist in the United States or Mexico that doesn't know the name Western Flyer.
So many people have contacted me since seeing my name associated with this boat about how they were influenced to get into science, specifically marine biology, because they read that book.
Anytime a young person, a student, can experience something real that they've read about, it's an important and powerful thing.
The fact that this boat is old and wooden and smells old and wooden is important to the experience that kids will have out on it.
Of course, we could build a replica of it, and it would be a replica of it. It might be more accurate than the one that's there, but it wouldn't be the Western Flyer. And we could stick a couple of pieces of wood from the Western Flyer in the new one, and it still wouldn't be the Western Flyer. It wouldn't be the boat that they walked on, that they stored their specimens down in the fish hole, that they sat up on the fly bridge and drove across the Sea of Cortez. It wouldn't be the boat.
Western Flyer, Cannery Row, the lab, even in the ways that they're now going to be changed necessarily by time and by modernity, they're going to still enable us to feel a connection that we can't render digitally, or even just through reading and imagining.
The whole idea is to bring this holistic worldview of Steinbeck and Ricketts together and to express it in a modern sort of way and to draw people into it of all ages.
In the same way Ed Ricketts showed John Steinbeck his first tide pool and opened up a whole new world of thinking for him, the Flyer could do that for young children.
I work on a lot of boats every day, but this one's going to leave a long mark on my life.